I think all of us went through a period of time of thinking, no, they can't be serious. We'd seen them kind of play this game multiple times.
So I read the whole thing, and then I read it again, and I read it again.
How do we know this is legitimate? How do we know this is being done in good faith?
Somebody starts speaking, and I realize it's our campaign director. The words that she said will stick with me for a long time. She said, "The company has decided to stop fighting your union." And I think I paused and I was like, what?
In late February, after 2.5 years of constant battles between Starbucks and unionizing workers, something unexpected happened. The world's biggest coffee chain asked the union to negotiate a first contract. So what changed? How did an upstart union get a $100 billion corporation to see the light, much less engage in a promising first round of bargaining? When Starbucks approached the union in February, its track record, hundreds of illegal firings, crackdowns, store closures, and broken promises, had leaders at Starbucks Workers United naturally skeptical.
They had just issued a statement on December 8th of 2023 saying they were ready to turn over a new leaf and that they were promising to bargain with all of the unionized stores and we'd have a contract by the end of 2024. And then we continued to see them, break US labor law, commit ULPs and retaliate against workers in the union stores.
But the company was serious this time, and suddenly desperate enough that it agreed to workers' terms for talking, including the pay increases, benefits, and credit card tipping illegally withheld from them.
And then I ran inside in tears and I started running around our whole store telling everyone that we were getting credit card tipping and that we were going to the bargaining table.
And the bargaining, it seems, has been legitimately productive thus far.
It is pretty incredible being able to be there in that room and see with my own two eyes that Starbucks is actually ready to make peace with us.
It came as a surprise to many workers, but the about face didn't come out of nowhere. So what was the union's strategy? How did an upstart union force one of the largest corporations in the world to the negotiating table?
The reality is with most of these large, multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations, you gotta hit them where it hurts. And those two places are, the bottom line and their reputation.
Getting Starbucks to the table required a multitude of factors, including strikes, relentless organizing, a shareholder uprising, and a deposed billionaire CEO who was dead set against it.
Could you ever see doing that and embracing the union as part of it? No.
Here's how Starbucks Workers United overcame the biggest union-busting campaign in modern memory in their own words. Lydia Claypool is a barista and organizer at a Starbucks in Overland Park, Kansas. She was fired a week after a one-day walkout for showing up to work with a sunburn.
Everyone else at our store that had been in the organizing committee or just a strong supporter ended up leaving or also being fired.
Seattle has had 12 stores vote in favor of unionizing, and 4 of those stores have been shut down, which leaves us with 8 union stores.
Caitlin Coughlin works at the flagship Starbucks Roastery in Seattle. Nationwide, Starbucks closed a total of 23 stores to clear out unionized workers, kill organizing drives, and chill future organizing.
We just stopped getting leads. People stopped reaching out. The first thought that came into people's minds when they thought of the word union, it was no longer, oh, that's what those people in Buffalo are doing. I heard that they're fighting for better working conditions. It was, oh, if you do that, your store gets shut down, so I don't want to do that. I
think every other day I woke up probably feeling like, how much longer can I possibly go on? How much longer can these, at this point, almost 10,000 workers, how can we, how do we get up every day and keep fighting when it doesn't look like there's an end in sight?
After 71 stores filed for union elections in March 2022, and 59 joined in April, the union added just 6 that August. It took time to reverse the decline. Starbucks itself proved helpful in doing so.
The turnover has just been so massive in the last 2 years, and some of that is just the nature of the service industry, right? But a lot of that is people coming into this company expecting better because the company claims to be better, and then finding that, it's no different than working at a McDonald's, right?
Yeah, a big thing with new partners is the withheld benefits that Starbucks was, keeping from partners. So credit card tips and a new dress code. Partners were coming into the store, one, not knowing that they were at a union store, and two, that they were immediately going to be treated differently than the partners at a different store up the road.
Lydia was ultimately reinstated by Starbucks, the first, and to date, still one of the only, union workers who the company admitted to improperly firing.
A few weeks after working with them, I'll tell them, did you know that the company fired me? And it's a lot of shocked reactions, and sharing the stories of why I was fired and why other coworkers were fired, I think shows them that the company doesn't really care about the hard work that we, perform.
The company was continually giving us stuff that we could use. It was the company continuing to mistreat its workers and continuing to break the law. And
telling them, yeah, Starbucks is illegally withholding these benefits from you, and you don't deserve that, and we're trying to fight them, and we're trying to win those back because we know that you do deserve those. That in of itself emboldens people.
Workers continued to get fired or have their hours cut, but the union quietly formulated plans. The organizing began to publicly ramp up again in early 2023, around the same time that the NLRB started to file charge after charge against Starbucks for unfair labor practices.
It was a combination of continuing to draw attention to the behavior of the company, continuing to organize stores in spite of the behavior of the company, and making sure that the world around us, those around us who could help us, were aware of what was going on.
We started having regular meetings a little less than a year after those closures. We organized actions, anything from t-shirt days all the way up to large national strikes.
We had to keep workers engaged. We knew this was going to be a long fight, but we also needed to remind people, what we were fighting for.
There was a conscious collective decision in our city and on the campaign as a whole, I think, to take a little step back from just yelling about all of our store closures all the time, because it was very traumatic, but at a certain point, it no longer serves us to have that be our main media talking point.
I tried to come up with unique ways that I could share information, but it wasn't bombarding people too much. So we would create little welcome brochures that were very store specific. They would share a little bit of history on why we first wanted to unionize. And, we would print off stickers and pass out pins and things that seem small, but they go a long way.
Major strikes like Red Cup Day continued to make national headlines, but so did things happening outside the campaign, including a push by institutional shareholders to force a reckoning inside the company.
CNBC has viewed a copy of an investor presentation from the Strategic Organizing Center, a coalition of unions, accusing the company's board of implementing, quote, one of the most glaring and destructive examples of human capital mismanagement in modern U.S. history in response to the union movement.
They pushed for an assessment of the labor practices, and they did that by voting their shares and telling the board of directors, hey, we don't like what we're hearing. We don't like what's going on. Some of those board members, too, they're heads of other very large corporations and companies, and they didn't want the stigma of being connected to a company that was, continually breaking U.S. labor law and mistreating its workers.
That wasn't anything that Starbucks had ever seen before. Having that type of allyship, I think, showed them that we weren't just coming at them really hard from one angle, and that we were slowly but surely starting to surround them entirely.
The figure at the top also changed. Howard Schultz left the company for a second time in April 2023 after a disastrous congressional testimony about union busting.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that there was a new, guy in charge, that there was a new CEO. It took him about a year to get his feet wet, but I think he came in, he saw that things were, not really where he wanted them to be, and then he took steps to right that.
I think all of those things really scared Starbucks, but in my opinion, I think that the thing that actually really was the final nail in the coffin for them was when they realized that we weren't going to stop organizing new stores. They realized that they weren't actually fighting 400 stores. They were fighting 400 stores plus all of the new stores that would continue organizing.
If you're going in there for revenge, if you're going in there because you want to take down a company, I think it's the wrong reason, right? You need to be going in there because you want to bring hope to your fellow workers. You want to improve your working conditions. You want to make things better. Anger is fleeting. Doesn't mean there isn't a place for that in these fights. There absolutely is, but it's not nearly as sustainable or powerful as the hope for a better future.
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you'd like to see more stories like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to get more Perfect Union in your feed. And if you have any ideas for stories that you would like for us to investigate, just drop them in the comments below.